The exhibition dealing with Nkt starts here. Nkt was established in 1891 by Hans Peter Puyo, of whom there is a bust in the very first display case. Puyo was a qualified engineer and had spent several years working in the United States at the Edison Machine Works. On returning to Denmark, he applied for a job with Gothersgade Power Station in Copenhagen, a job which really attracted him. However, his application was turned down. The rejection rankled, and he decided he might just as well set up his own business. To that end, he borrowed 20,000 kroner from his family. 20,000 kroner was a very great deal of money in 1891. Puyo used it to start Nordisk Elektrisk Ledningstråd og Kabelfabrik, the name under which Nkt was originally known. His first order was to supply 243 kilos of cable wire to the Copenhagen Telephone Company. After starting out in a very small way, based in a backstreet factory in Copenhagen, the firm gradually expanded. Puyo became a prominent figure in Danish industry. He helped start the Danish Electrotechnical Association and was twice chairman of the Danish Industrial Council. And he was also Minister for Trade during what was possibly Denmark's shortest ever prime ministership, which lasted from the 5th of April to the 5th of May 1920. Puyo's business had prospered and became a limited company as early as 1898. Puyo himself was eventually to leave the company in 1923 in the wake of the Landmandsbank affair. A very large number of people were implicated in this notorious scandal, and a great many industrialists and businessmen were fined for their involvement. Puyo was one of them. He was accused of what we now call insider trading, and although he was initially acquitted by Copenhagen City Court, the case was subsequently referred to the High Court, and Puyo was sentenced to 4 months' imprisonment. He duly served his sentence, but protested that he had been unfairly treated. A number of industrial historians believe he suffered a miscarriage of justice, and that certain persons may have wanted to make Puyo's position as head of the company untenable, thereby securing his removal. Whatever the truth of the matter, Puyo was to leave the company. Puyo went on to start a new firm, which was initially known as the Danish Galoche and Rubber Company. While this name may sound somewhat comical to our ears, the firm would later become Codan Rubber, a major Danish industry player. Codan Rubber therefore owes its origins to Hans Peter Puyo. On the wall over here, we have a large number of photos of various Nkt factories and facilities. The two largest photos here show the cable factory that was built in the Frederiksberg part of Copenhagen. In those days, there was ample building space for a factory. In time, however, as happened with these kinds of businesses, the city's expansion caught up with it. The result was that in 1944, Nkt purchased the Viberholm site, where we find ourselves today. At that time, Viberholm was farmland, with plenty of space to build a cable factory, and the construction work began in 1951. The project was to attract very considerable interest in the press, the factory being built using pre-stressed concrete units. This technique had never been seen before, and construction advanced very, very quickly. Nkt's design specification was for a factory which, quote, looks good, looks proper, and does not have excrescences in a variety of architectural styles, end quote. It is still evident when walking around the area that this design specification was met. It is, or at least it was, a good-looking factory. Nowadays, Nkt no longer has any production activities at Viberholm. They were discontinued in the year 2000. In Denmark itself, the company has a cable factory in Asnæs and one in Kalundborg. Nkt also has cable factories around the world, in Norway, China, Poland, Germany and the Czech Republic. And it is these facilities that produce the various cables made by the company. When production at Viberholm was at its height, however, more than 5,000 people used to work here, and the site really is enormous. Next to the first lecterns, we have a model of the entire Viberholm site. All the dark green area is Puyoparken, and the main road down through Puyoparken is approximately 1 kilometre long. The roads that cross this main road are approximately 500 metres long. The factory was designed so that all raw materials would enter from the south and all finished products would leave from the north, near the railway. This was ideal because the company had a spur right next to Glostrup station. Also there on the first podium, we have a small cable drum with a very special history. NKT's cable drums are reusable, and customers buying from NKT pay a deposit on them. Incidentally, NKT also has a small workshop in Stenlille that makes these wooden drums. Well, one day this particular drum turned up, and the staff had the task of finding out who had returned it. They checked their computer printouts, but this cable drum was not listed. Never mind, there could have been a mistake. But then someone had the bright idea of looking in the old handwritten accounts ledgers, and sure enough, there it was. It turned out that this small cable drum had been with Danish State Railways in Aarhus for no less than 56 years before someone went to the trouble of returning it. Anyway, the next step was to refund Danish State Railways 25 kroner, and NKT did just that. Just behind the model of Priorparken, we have two sandstone reliefs. One of them depicts the cable factory's first logo, a spider spinning its thread around a cluster of lightning flashes. This motif also inspired the name of NKT's staff association, which was christened the Spider when set up in 1919. The other sandstone relief comes from NKT's former wire factory in Middelfart. This facility was built with the primary purpose of supplying copper wire to the cable factory. Copper wire was a key component in NKT's cables, and someone at NKT actually suggested it might be a good idea to relocate the whole company to Middelfart. After all, the town was at the heart of Denmark, it was on the railway, and above all, it had its own dock facility. The latter would be really useful for shipping raw materials in and finished products out. The idea was turned down, however. Maybe prestige considerations in those days precluded a move away from Copenhagen. That's what I believe anyway. However that may be, the wire factory was completed in 1899. As well as wire, the company developed an enormous range of other products, including nails, screws, hitch wire, barbed wire, screen cloth for gravel quarries, and much more besides. Today, the wire factory is no longer a part of NKT. It was divested to a US company. But the initials NKT have still been retained in the new company's present name, Nkt Fasteners. The American company was actually permitted to acquire the old logo. So when Danes visit their local building mart on a Saturday morning, they can still buy nails and screws with the name NKT on the pack. The fact that NKT began making nails in Middelfart was something of a chance event. A consignment of machinery, enough to equip a complete nail factory, became stranded in Denmark on its way to Russia. However, the year was 1917, and the Russians were preoccupied with other matters. The revolution was underway, and nails and screws were presumably a secondary concern. So the equipment was purchased by NKT instead, and nail production commenced. Standing here, we have an old nail-making machine. It's not very old in terms of years, but it's old technologically. It manufactures nails by drawing in a piece of square wire, cutting it to size, and striking the end to form the head. We also have a photo on the back wall showing a whole line of nail-making machines, and I'm sure that most of us can imagine what an inferno it must have been to work in. Health and safety was not a major concern in those days, and working in the factory must have been really noisy. The last company we have here is Sundby Valseverk. NKT acquired the old Frederiksværk copper works, but closed it down and built a modern factory at Sundby in the Amager district of Copenhagen. The Sundby plant was a rolling mill that handled all types of metals. Standing here, we have a number of profiles. We have several large rolls of aluminium, and just above them is a roll of household silver foil, which was also among the company's products. The factory also made milk bottle tops, which some of us will still remember, as well as silver foil for cigarette packets. Products therefore ranged from the very large to the very small. Also behind the model of Priorparken, we see a flashing lamp. That lamp had a very special purpose which predated the mobile phone. Senior staff were provided with different colour codes, so if the lamp flashed orange, it would mean that there was a phone call for Jensen the foreman, and he would rush down to the office to take it. That particular lamp used to stand in one of the main production areas, and all the other workshops were also equipped with these lamps. On the first lectern immediately after the Prøveparken model is a large photo. This is from the office at the wire factory and dates from 1904. The amusing thing about this photo is that in a set of shelves on the corner of one of the desks, there are two containers that resemble collecting tins. One is marked with a 0 and the other with a quarter. These two containers were used for clocking in purposes. In the morning, the container marked with a 0 would stand in front and the workers would put their name badges in it when they arrived. At 6 o'clock precisely, this container would be removed and replaced by the one marked with a quarter. Workers arriving at 1 minute past 6 would then be docked a quarter of an hour from their weekly pay. Lateness was therefore not a regular occurrence.